Welcome to the studio at African Utility Week. I'm Rose Bundock, editor of metering.com, and I'm joined now by Cornelius Malan, metering manager at the City of Cape Town. Welcome, thanks for your time.
Oh, thanks a lot.
Corny, your role is meter procurement at the City of Cape Town.
Yes, and also the maintenance of all large power or commercial industrial meters.
Okay. What is the City of Cape Town's approach to demand-side management?
There are in essence two approaches. The one is the domestic side and the other one is the commercial industrial side. For our commercial industrial side, we are actually using time of use tariffs. Time of use tariffs in the City of Cape Town is slightly different to the time of use tariffs that's used by Eskom, in that we do not take public holidays into account like Telkom, and we, to compensate for that, we actually use the standard time that Eskom uses. We also classify as off-peak on Saturdays. We did that to align it with our peak off-peak tariff, which were running for quite a number of years and that were quite successful. But now to actually to implement time of use better, we've now discontinued the off-peak, but the two are still a little bit, or basically aligned.
So you have a separate program for industrial users and residential?
Yeah. Residential it's very difficult to implement, and in the long term we see that we will have meters with switches in them that you can remotely operate. But what you must remember is that to replace a prepayment meter or domestic meter is quite a costly exercise, and it will take 10 years to implement meters, because that's more or less the replacement period. So I do not see things happening very quickly on the domestic market. We will have to design and plan the technology in the meter correctly, so that it will actually, once we have enough penetration of those meters after a few years, that we can start utilizing it. Currently, when there's supply shortages, we switch off everybody. Not only domestic meters, we switch off suburbs on a rolling blackout sequence when instructed by Eskom.
And how are the sort of industrial users responding to that?
From a practical point of view, I think most of them have now do now have backup supplies in place.
Okay.
But I'm not sure that that's a long-term viable option. I think that in the end we should implement real-time pricing that reflects the true cost of energy during the supply shortages, so that industrial and commercial customers can decide whether they stay on grid or off grid. And I think us as industry should plan for it even now, because I do not think, even though the two power stations are now being built, I've got an inkling that supply shortages of that nature will remain with us. I do not think that it's a short-term issue. I think it's a long-term issue. And I also think it's a worldwide issue eventually, because it will happen in other parts of the world as well.
So what sort of time frame before an industrial user could be looking at, a meter that allows them to use different tariffs?
The meters that we currently install can do it. Our systems will need to be updated a little bit, but there's nothing preventing us from implementing it maybe 6 months from now. But you need to have systems in place that can do it. We're in the lucky situation that we've got an AMI system. We use SAP as the billing engine, and we use PNP SCADA as the meter data unification system. Okay. And we're very happy with the interaction and the results that we're giving, or that's giving us. So I think we're on the right route there. For instance, you can press a button in SAP, and that can schedule a meter reading in the field, and within half an hour or even 5 or 10 minutes, the meter reading is back and you have it. So our systems are now in place, And although we have to rework the tariff, because it will be a new type of tariff, it can be done. But I do not think all utilities are there. Eskom might be there. I'm not sure about their system.
Okay. So I mean, you said it could, it could happen in 6 months, but is it actually sort of been planned?
No, nothing like that is planned. But the environment shows that it will happen because Eskom is not recovering the cost of their peaking plant. They've publicly said that, and they've said that this year they will go into a big shortage because of it, and will have to fund that shortage somehow. And I think it's only fair that the people that actually use the energy during those times fund it. And I think that's the methodology that one should use.
What about the benefits of meter data for the actual end user, like the large power user, being able to track their consumption and try and sort of smooth the peaks in their production? Is that something they could expect to have for, in the short term?
Yes, I think all utilities have got a responsibility to make meter data available to their customers. We currently have a system where we can make it available to the customers. The customers must sign up with the City e-services portal. It's a bit of a long process, but it's a long process because we want to prevent, we would like the information of each customer to be secure. So once they've actually complied with those requirements, they can, at the drop of their hat, go in and look at the electricity consumption. Most likely it will be up to date till tonight, because our normal schedule is that we read most meters from about just after 12 to about 3 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
So that's when we read the bulk of our meters over the GPRS networks. And after that read, the previous day's data will be there. So they can project that into their systems, or they can use it in their systems to show their staff, and management can look at it, and the engineers can look at it so every day. So it is not real time currently, but some of the more modern meters do publish the readings on an ongoing basis, and I think some of the meters we will get to real time data before the end of the year.
Okay, so, before the end of the year. Yeah. That would be for industrial users? For
industrial users, yeah.
Okay. So
but it's near real time data, because what we find is energy data is mostly used for planning. So to plan your next week, you need last week's consumption, and you can say, well, I've got a power factor correction here, or I forgot to shed a lot of load at night because I left plant on, and then you can schedule the next week. So I don't think it's an hourly by hourly basis. I think the real planning needs to be done on a weekly or fortnightly basis.
So we're obviously coming into winter here in South Africa. What can we expect in terms of load shedding?
We actually just listen to Eskom. If Eskom tells us what to do, we have to do it, because if the Eskom system regulator tells us to shed, we just comply. So I do not. You'll have to ask Eskom what's in store for us this winter.
So I mean, I guess the ideal is to move from load shedding to load shifting. When do you hope the City of Cape Town will be doing that?
I do not. It is, for me, the responsibility of shifting load is the customers, and I think most customers have an understanding of the problem. And the biggest load are really our domestic customers, especially in the City of Cape Town. We know that our peak between 6 and 10 in the evening are caused by our domestic customers.
Yeah.
And if we get them on board to voluntary shed, I think it will assist Eskom in the long run not to shed others.
So what incentives are you, or what kind of, you know, how are you encouraging customers to
the
sort
City
of
of
switch
Cape
off the
Town
geyser and
do not know the extent of the problem. We know it exists, but we do not know. And I think it's Eskom's responsibility to insensitize people to shift load during those times. Because it's also, it might be, they might only know 4 to 6 or 12 or 24 hours in advance. And to communicate things like that via an organization like the City of Cape Town is problematic. And it's really a countrywide communication that they should. I know that they use the television and so forth, and I think it's good, but they might be able to use more media.
Yeah, what about a sort of deeper customer awareness of why you need to use less power? Do you think that's being sufficiently communicated?
I do think most people in the country know about the shortage of electricity, but I do not think they understand that, like any plant, electricity infrastructure is not 110% reliable, and you need outages, or sometimes outages happen. Power systems faults happen, and you have outages. And I don't think they understand that with these outages, you get the shortages. I think the connection between those are not there. And they don't understand it's a dynamic situation. I know there's a static situation and there's a general shortage as well, and we have to save. But I do not think they understand that there are sometimes more plant out and that they need to react to it, because it will have an impact. For instance, if the domestic customers bring their part, and the City of Cape Town needs to shed 200 megawatts, but the domestic customers does that on their own, then we don't need these rolling blackouts. So it is important for people to understand that.
So could you say that perhaps more needs to be done to sort of educate?
Yeah, I think one can always educate people. I think you're right. I think one should educate as far as you can. And every step towards education, maybe programs in school to educate people of basic principles of why things need to switch off sometimes.
Yeah.
I think even at that basic level, it would be an advantage. I think most people don't even understand that the power lines to their house, there are lines in parallel to, not up to their house, but most of the way. I don't think they know that.
So is the City of Cape Town sort of actively tackling that?
No, I don't think the City of Cape Town. There are programs geared towards saving energy, and I think you need to speak to the energy saving people, and they do quite a lot of work on energy saving and switching to alternative technologies. So, but to actually go into the technical detail of how electricity is delivered to the house, I don't think that's taught in schools, and I don't think people understand it.
Yeah. So we're obviously at African Utility Week, and there's many utilities come from all over Africa. What advice or what learnings could you share with them and from the City of Cape Town's metering experience?
One of the things that I've learned is that let's talk metering systems. Metering systems are very complex. It's a cheap little device sitting in your house that measures or meters electricity, but it's a very complicated system in a whole. You need the whole chain from the meter back to your billing engine, back to the willingness and the contract between you and the customer to actually get the money flow from the customer to pay for the utility. So it's not a simple system. And if you change stuff, you need to be careful to change too much, even in the minds of the customers. There has been problems with the implementation of smart meters because the customers perceive the electric noise generated by the smart meter as unhealthy. so these things do happen, and if you change too quickly, the customers won't be able to absorb these changes. So you have to change slowly, but you must also understand that the infrastructure there must last for a long time. It's not something like a cell phone that you replace. When you replace a meter out there, it should last for 10 to 15 years, else it's too expensive. So it's important that you also understand that. It's a long time to actually, for new products to penetrate into the electricity market before they actually at domestic level become useful to the utility. The other thing that we've learned is that split meters are key, maybe in Africa and maybe in the world, or maybe in most parts of the developing world. Our revenue protection that we achieve are really there because of smart meters. Okay. Or split meters, sorry, split meters. And by making a meter smart, you do not overcome the inherent difficulties with a meter in a house. You need to keep on thinking about how do you protect that income, because now you're not visiting that meter once every 3 months or once a month. You're now visiting it maybe once a year. So the chances of somebody bypassing the meter, it happens much easier. And the guy do not have to open the meter to bypass it. With split meters, the meters sit in a kiosk. It's divorced from the customer. It's on your property. So for us to go back to integrated meters will be a very difficult choice. Okay. So I see split meters to remain part of the Cape Town and big parts of the supply industry that understands how it works for quite some time, and I think it might remain that way. The new technology, smart meters, the meter communicates to a module in the house, and it does it over power lines, and it's successful. The technologies, we've dwelled with some technologies that weren't successful, but other technologies are successful. Okay. And these meters will, as we replace our old credit meters, we will get more and more split meters in the market, because when you replace a credit meter, you need a power line carrier, or because you haven't got communication cabling to the house. For new installations, we will still use the pilot course in the service connection cable. So.
Okay, so that would be your advice for Africa?
Yeah. At domestic level, I think remain with split meters. That's a key advice. Second thing is, remember that the changes have a long-term effect, and it's a complex system. You know.
And they need to choose the right technology that's going to last that.
You have to have the technology that lasts. It doesn't help you put in a meter with a battery in it soldered onto a PC board that lasts 5 years. You need to put a meter in that will last 10 to 15 years, else you're not getting the bang for your buck.
Yeah. Quite. Thank you, Corny, for your time. That's fantastic. I'm Rose Bundock at African Utility Week. Stay tuned.